Keith, good to see you.
How you doing, buddy?
Good. I got one of my power colors on.
Oh my goodness. I have to wear sunglasses. Does it come with batteries now?
It's just me. Just me. I got quite the motor.
Man,
it's just me.
You got the V thing going here?
Yeah, man. It's power color. Red is normally my color, but I thought I'd go a little off red.
Got your little Bronco thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
Good. Almost every show that we have, I start by saying how happy I am to see you, and I find that to be an emotion that I love experiencing. I think everyone does.
And communicating it too, and I love to hear it as the one who's being flattered.
You do like flattery.
I do like flattery. Yeah, that's true. It's one of the things I'm working on.
That's right. So what is today's show on?
Well, today we're going to talk about negative emotions and why they hurt you and how to maybe replace them with something more healthy.
Yeah, I think having a show about useless emotions is really important. I've certainly employed my fair share of them, for sure.
Totally.
So what are some of the negative emotions that you want to discuss?
Well, I think the big two are guilt and anxiety. I think those are the ones that bring us down probably the hardest. Often because we feel like we've let people down, or we feel like the future is overwhelming and we have no way out. Both of those are incorrect presumptions, and I think part of the problem of even dealing with the whole topic of negative emotions is deciding whether you're telling yourself a story that is untrue. So first you have to assess, am I reasonable in even thinking that this emotion is correct? For example, let's talk about the Four Agreements. One of the big things in the Four Agreements is the idea that you don't presume. Well, usually we feel guilt because we're presuming that somebody else thinks that we did something wrong when they might not have even seen it. The other thing that is important in the Four Agreements is the idea that you don't take things personally. But I guess I'd sum up this whole area with the notion that, do you really want to use up your present moments worrying about the future that's not here, or being guilty about something that happened in the past? Can you forgive yourself for contributing to the Spartans' loss of the Peloponnesian War? Well, that's what, 1,000 years, 2,000 years ago. If it was yesterday that you did something that you regret, yesterday, 2,000 years, same thing.
That's right. The past is the past.
Past is the past, man. It's history. What do you think? How do you deal with your emotions? We all get them. What do you do?
I want to add a couple to that list.
Okay.
That are big ones for me that I find are useless. Along with guilt, blame and shame.
Blame and shame, sure.
Man,
that's right.
Dude,
Yeah.
I have done my fair share of using those. And with the anxiousness, I'm not a really anxious person. I think a lot of that has come from my mom. My mom is not anxious. She takes everything
calm.
Calm, man.
Nice.
She takes everything in stride. She never gets too low. Never gets too high. She's just right, nice and even.
Wow.
Like she's just mellow. And so I kind of learned from that. And when I would get amped up, I surround myself with very peaceful people like you and Tim, and so that totally helps. Our friend David is a really peaceful kind of cat too.
David's great.
And so that, spending time with him has also helped me stay pretty calm. So I'm not a really anxious person. I'm not fretting about what is going to happen tomorrow or the next day anymore. I used to, but some people I talk to, man, they're anxious about every single thing. Who's coming over today? Dinner guests, the house not being cleaned. What am I going to wear today? The next, every minute
It's just going all the time.
Man, to be in that heightened state of emotion, I'm like, I just feel for them.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting, and I just like...
Who wants to be around people like that?
Exactly. I mean, the moments to where I've been anxious, like when I was learning how to swim, I'm pretty anxious. I mean, there's this whole kind of like factor of dying that's present. So maybe that's justified. But for other people, their anxiety is so high that it feels like they're going to die in that moment. And so my heart goes out to them, because what I experienced with learning how to swim and that heightened state of fear and anxiety, that passed once I got out of the water and learned how to swim. Like, that's over. I don't have that now. But for those people that live in that space of being anxious or fear every single day, man, it's still going on for them. And, fortunately, there's something that you can do about it. In regards to the emotion of guilt, man, whenever I've failed or let someone down, particularly let someone down, man, or myself, the guilt is just tremendous. And I listened to Brene Brown, and she talks about these emotions of blame, guilt, and shame. If you haven't listened to Brene Brown, you got to do her TED Talk or listen to her on YouTube on blame, shame, and guilt. And she really helped me see that those are useless emotions and they do not serve me. And so I gave them up.
I think part of the problem is that we're all sort of indoctrinated by our parents in a way. Not your mom. Your mom was an amazing example for you. What a wonderful role model.
She was fantastic.
Calm and even keeled.
I had my stepfather on the other side. Here's this. A little blame, a little shame, So he was right there.
You never get pure sugar. It's sugar with vinegar.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
But the thing is that we're indoctrinated a little bit with feeling guilt and feeling like guilt is an okay thing to lay on other people. And it's totally not. I mean, I think parents who do that to their kids really do them a disservice. They try to manipulate the kid into behaving in a way that they want them to behave by making the kid feel guilty. And that's just wrong. But I think we get used to the idea, we're so accustomed to feeling guilty that we almost feel bad if we don't feel guilty. That's perverse. But I think that's kind of what happens. I'm interested in the blame and shame thing too. One of the things that I've noticed is we spend an inordinate amount of time when we're talking about life situations with our friends, trying to figure out who was wrong,
right.
Who to blame, who caused all of it. What good does it do you? There's an old, I think it's a Zen parable, but it's something about, a guy gets shot with the arrow, right? There's some enemy out there, we don't know who he is, why he's doing the shooting, but he shoots an arrow, hits the guy in the chest, and the guy is going back and his eyes are rolling in his head, and he's saying to himself, and people can hear it, who shot me? Why did they shoot me? And then somebody else comes up and looks at him and says, that's a good point. Who shot this guy? Why did they? And nobody's tending to him medically.
Right.
Pull out the damn arrow. Solve the problem. Don't talk about who's responsible for it.
That's right.
It happened, okay?
Yeah.
That's the base point. Not who's wrong. It happened, okay?
That's right.
Here's where you're at. Now go from there.
Yeah, I totally agree. With the whole blame thing, I think it comes down to somebody's got to pay. Somebody is the old witch hunt. Somebody's going to burn at the stake. We're not leaving here until somebody pays for this.
Yes, but if you can reconceptualize and say, hey, that's not my pay grade.
Right.
That's the universe. Or whoever you believe, God or whatever. That's their issue.
That's right. That's right. We let karma sort all that out.
There you go. Now you're
and because it's a waste of your time.
Totally.
It's a waste, and time is so precious. As with every day closer to the next birthday, I'm just like, I'm so present to how precious my time is. That I don't want to spend it, blaming. But I did my fair share of blame. Something didn't go right. Who forgot to bring this? Or who did this? And I'm like, oh, I did. I blame myself inside, but I don't tell other people that I did. But yeah, and then after the blame, comes the guilt. And the blame, shows up not just with the people you're around every day and you're close to. Something happens on the news or on the internet, and you just read the first headline before even considering that all the facts aren't in. We immediately jump to this must have happened. Somebody has a car accident. Oh, they must have been drinking.
Yeah,
or this is the history of this athlete or this celebrity. And we just automatically jump to those kinds of conclusions. And we rob people of the opportunity for that not to be the case, or the opportunity that if they did do something, to reinvent themselves. And I think that everyone deserves an opportunity to show up better than they were the day before. And so, and with guilt, which I think blame I've done, again, my fair share of, but the guilt thing, that will cripple you. That will cut you off at the knees. And it has cut me off at the knees quite a few times. And, oh man, just like, how do I move on? How can I face people, that I let down, or they told me that I let them down? Like, how do I wake up, the next day and go back out there? and you go back out there because that's who you are. That's what you do, and surround yourself by that circle that is going to give you the space to reinvent yourself or show up better than you were the day before. And they're not going to saddle you down with any kind of guilt and blame.
What things help you? Like, I know you say basically that's who you are and you push through it, but are there other things like breathing or meditation, or like when you find yourself starting to fill up with that, what do you do to sort of stave it off?
Along with those two of guilt, blame, and guilt and blame, there's a shame piece too, to where I don't want to share. So when those three, when the trifecta shows up, what do I do? Podcast, man. Like, I'm a podcast enthusiast.
You make podcasts without me?
These are ones I listen to.
Okay.
I made a few without you. Truth be told, I made a few without you. But I mean, we're still cool though, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay. So, but what I do is I listen to podcasts, and that's where I got the Brene Brown, who I talked about, in my ear. I've got Wayne Dyer, who we talked about quite a few times.
He's great on guilt.
And I've got Tara Brock rolling, and they're in my ear, and they're telling me about the useless emotions, and I have a choice, and I can choose a different kind of emotion. I can choose to see the beauty in the moment. I can choose to take action, and things like that. So I listen to that, and then I'm mindful about the situation. And I try to be present to what's going on. I own it. If I did something, I own it. I may not own it the way other people want me to own it. And that's their thing, but I own it the way that it's going to help me move forward, to apologize. And the apology sometimes isn't like the next day. Maybe it's a couple of weeks, or maybe it's a year from now, but trust me, it's coming, because I'm on this quest, on this journey to be my best self. And the last thing I do is I ask myself, I have a choice here. I can choose to stay in these emotions, or I can choose to make a different choice into where I take action, leave these emotions behind, and get back to business of being my best self, whether it's getting up and going to the gym, which is always great for me, releasing endorphins, helping me see the world completely different than I see it in that present moment. Oh God, it's so incredible what that does for me.
Yeah.
Talking to people that are great, to help me be, and there are people like, if I did something that was not very smart, they're not going to say, dude, it was okay, or
right.
whatever. It's like, you can't change it. They're going to say? They're going to tell me the truth. You can't change it. So those are some of the things that I do when those emotions show up, so that I can rid myself and shed those useless emotions and move on to being powerful again. What about you?
Well, the first thing I think is that you accept that you have the emotion. I think it's wrong to try to repress things that come up. And I think guilt is so ingrained in all of us, and anxiety is as well, that they're going to come up. And so when they come up, I just sort of acknowledge it. Okay, anxiety. Okay, guilt. I feel guilty about this. And I might just stew with it for a while. I don't try to take it like a bull, horns of the bull, and try to wrestle it to the ground. I just let it kind of be there for a while, but only a while. And then I always try to breathe. Whenever I'm in a stressful situation, I always take a couple of breaths, steady myself, center myself, and then also I meditate every day, so I'll work that into my meditation, and I'll say things like, okay, I'm thinking about, I hurt this person's feelings, or I don't know, I stole a banana from Safeway, and I feel guilt, whatever it is, and then just sort of meditate about that, and then let it go. And usually during the meditation, there's a peacefulness that comes that helps to get rid of it. And I think the other important thing is, our emotions come from our thoughts, right? I mean, you can't have an emotion without first it coming in your head that something has caused it, there's a stimulus. So if our emotions come from our thoughts, we can control our thoughts.
Absolutely.
So the idea is, I'm just not doing a very good job of controlling my thoughts. Let's switch it. Two things that are a problem, though. One is going outside of yourself, and I usually point to the examples of drugs and alcohol. Going outside of yourself, because what you want is a state change. You want to change the state of mind, or your state of health, because of these roiling emotions, and using alcohol is sort of a common way to do that. And that's a dead end, man, because the problem's still there. After you're sober, you still got the same issue. You get temporary relief.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a long-term loss.
Yeah, and you've lost a bunch of time that you could have been, moving through that space.
Moving through it, right. And I think it's also important to have somebody to talk to, particularly the person that you think you hurt. So, for example, if I felt guilty because I slighted someone, maybe the way to handle that is to call a person up and say, hey, I think I slighted you. I mean, I know I did.
Right.
And
I think I did.
I think I did.
That's a small game.
Yeah, there you go.
I know I slighted you.
I know I intended to slight you. I don't like you. And you hang up on it.
Right.
No, you say, I slighted you, and I don't feel good about that. I want to make it up to you. I mean, I really apologize. I'm sorry.
Right.
And see what happens on the other side. We're afraid of confrontation, but confrontation is nothing. It's just a conversation. You won't get a mark in your body. It's not a life-threatening thing for you. It's just an embarrassment to the ego, which always wants to protect you and always wants to be right. Do you want to be right? Do you want to have peace?
Right. So, give an example of those emotions, those useless emotions that we listed. Give an example of one that you kind of experienced, so that people can really connect with us on that level. Like we're not just telling you what to do, like we've lived it.
Anxiety. Here's a good one for anxiety. Most people are afraid of public speaking, me included, but I make part of my living that way. So I'll get really nervous about having to do something that's very difficult in court, or making a presentation to somebody that is important, like a client or a judge. And so I'll start building in advance worry. And I think the only way that you can get out of that is just by, two things. One is you visualize doing it successfully enough so that your mind can't distinguish between the visualization and the actuality of it.
Isn't that great though?
Isn't that cool?
Your mind cannot tell which one is real.
No, that's right. And sometimes what I'll do, if I've done this many times, I try cases out of Arizona, different venues. The Ninth Circuit, last time I had an argument in the Ninth Circuit, it's a very imposing building. The judges sit way up in front of you. It's ornate, it's just gorgeous, and I'm a working class kid from the wrong side of the tracks in Chicago, and I sit in there and think, what the hell am I doing here? But I went into that courtroom before I did the case, and I just got used to it. And I just walked around, I looked at where people were sitting and what would be doing, and that alleviates the anxiety because I could visualize it. And then when I went to sleep that night, I went to sleep thinking about me being successful and making the points I wanted to make in front of the judges.
Right.
So visualization, I think, is really helpful for anxiety. Second thing is, I think we talked about this before, and that's what I call, and then what? So you figure your worst scenario. Okay, I blow the argument, I lose the case. Okay, and then what? Well, that means I'm not going to be respected by my peers and I'm not going to make enough money. And then what? Well, that means I'm going to be penniless and I'm going to live in it. I mean, it just gets so ridiculous that you can't even believe yourself.
None of it's true.
None of it's true. It's just all nonsense.
Yeah. So with me, I would say guilt and shame. I'll give an example of those. I was unfaithful in a relationship. People, learned about it and they talked about it and shared about it. And some things were said, and again, another opportunity to practice, unconditional love to the people that, that said some things, because I've done my share of judging, so I don't condemn anybody for judging. I've done it. And being unfaithful in that relationship and having to, knowing that in the next couple of days or the next day, I'm going to have to go and see these people. Wow. and walk in there. So the shame was tremendous. And then the guilt because, I felt like people were counting on me and I let people down.
Wow, yeah.
So dealing with that was tough, man. It was really tough.
Did you listen to the podcast then? Did that help?
Dude, the podcasts were helpful, but I hadn't fully started listening to them. I was just kind of relying on recalling passages of great teachers that I've listened to and read, and I fell, back really, really hard on the education from Landmark, about situations and things like that, about how to deal with those situations, how to be powerful in the moment when life doesn't show up the way you want it to, and life certainly wasn't showing up the way I wanted it to during that period. But I remember it's like, man, eventually you're going to have to deal with this. Eventually, you're gonna have to see people.
Right.
You know, I mean, I could, of course, you know, pack up, leave town, but eventually, I'm gonna have to see people. And so, how long do I want this level of intense suffering, of the shame and guilt, to persist? And I was like, I don't want it to last another day. So if this is part of me getting on the other side of this, is to walk through that threshold, I called a meeting the next day. Like, let's have a meeting the next day. I kind of bumbled and fumbled my way through the meeting, looking back on it, but that was necessary as part of the process. And, you know, fortunately, you know, there were some people that were gracious and loving, and they, you know, just said, hey man, everybody makes mistakes, everybody does this. Or some people didn't even say it was a mistake. They didn't even have any judgment on it. Like, dude, we love you. It's all good. You're human. You know, period. Like, I mean, and that's how I want to show it for people, right?
That's
I mean,
right.
like,
Didn't that feel great?
man, I love those people. Those people that stood up for me like that.
Yes,
that were that gave me that soft landing. Dude, forever.
Absolutely.
They need a kidney. Take it. Yeah, I mean, so. That kind of, that's what I did. You know, I just acted immediately, and I didn't want the suffering to last another day. And I just was really clear that to get on the other side of it, this is the door that I've got to walk through, and I'm going to walk through this door sooner than later. And so that's how I dealt with it.
I think that's a really key point for all of us, and that's the idea that we have a natural tendency to want to run away from things that are conflicting, or things that create guilt, or things that create shame. Whatever the negative is, we want to run away from it. And often, you said before, you might want to leave town, kiddingly, but some people do.
I wanted to.
But the reality is, the only way through any of the crap in life is through it. It's the only way. You've got tax issues, go right through it to the IRS. Get a lawyer, go fight your butt off, and just go right through it and deal with it. You're going to get evicted, don't hide, go to the landlord, work something out. You got a problem with your girlfriend, put it on the table. You cheated on her, put it on the table, get it out. The only way it works is if you go through it. And it's not easy.
No. And if you
but
don't,
you gotta do it.
And if you don't, the suffering just persists, and it becomes more and more intense.
And the problem stays.
It stays there, like you've done nothing. So after that meeting, and that next day, and the day after that, and everything else, I remember that I just kept putting one foot in front of the other, one step in front of the other, and pretty soon I was making progress of creating something new. I was learning from the experience, and had I stayed in that space of guilt and shame, there would be no newness. There'd be no newness. There'd be no growth. No lessons learned, and I would not have had the opportunity to expand my capacity to be unconditional in my love and support of others.
Well, and I want to acknowledge you for that. That was an enormous cataclysm in your life. That was an enormous...
You helped me get through it.
Well, that was an enormous trauma, and I want to let everybody know out there that not once during that time when the membership judged him, and there were things that really affected his bottom line, and he could have every right to be critical of the people that left. Never once did you ever say anything negative about anyone. It was always, I understand, I give them love and let them go, and that's life.
Yeah, thank you, Rick, for that announcement. It means a lot.
Very powerful. It chokes me up to think of it. I mean,
thank you.
It was tough.
And I had a choice, and what's the alternative? To stay where I was. And,
well, you could have bitched
suffer more.
everybody. I mean, that's what most people do. He's a jerk anyway. We didn't need that. That's not your way anymore.
None of that moves me closer to where I want to go.
That's right.
And just being clear on that. So we talked about the useless emotions. What are some positive, powerful emotions to replace those with? So we don't want to tell people what the problem is and not give them a solution. So what have you found to be some powerful emotions to replace those with?
The big one, headline, number one, top asterisk, can't beat it, gratitude, above all.
No doubt.
Gratitude for friends that like Keith and Tim and others in ToBeRe and in our work and that we meet. And gratitude about being healthy, gratitude about having options, gratitude about not being subject to a terrible political system where you can't move or breathe, gratitude for having enough to eat, gratitude for not being sick, gratitude for being able to talk and help people and maybe be helped back from them. I mean, list goes on and on. You can literally start with your teeth and end with the Z in the encyclopedia for things to be grateful for.
Yeah, I think that the number one is, just like you said, is gratitude. And what I found that when I'm being grateful, it's impossible to feel anything else. I can't feel the anxiety because I'm too grateful for the things that I do have in my life, the people that are here with me, that I am able to breathe and that I'm among the living. And I can't feel guilt, blame, shame. I can't feel any of that,
True.
if
It's true.
I have gratitude present. And Tim gave me this exercise in which I do, and I may have mentioned it before. And before I go to bed every night, I take my 5 fingers out, I touch my thumb to each one, and as I do it, I name something that happened that day. And I'm mindful of it to not just run through it and kind of go through the process, but I'm being mindful of what it was.
To be grateful for.
To be grateful for.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to be grateful for today, I'm going to be grateful of you opening up your place in Sedona so that we can connect and talk and, riff a little bit. I'm going to be grateful to Sharon this morning, who taught an amazing class, and my friend Pancho and Carla and Amy were all there. Nice. I'm be grateful that the freeway and the car that I have, that got me here. I'm grateful for that vehicle, and so I'm just gonna go through. And this is only about noon today. So I still got about another 8 hours, because I go to bed early. So I still got another 8 hours of things that I know that will make the list. And so when I'm in that space, I don't care what happened that day, I'm grateful for.
And think of it this way too, even if you don't have things that you think are important enough to acknowledge, then acknowledge things that are small. Maybe the smile that you saw on a kid's face, or maybe you did something that picked up a tab for somebody for lunch. Anything that you...
Or somebody picked yours up.
Or somebody picked yours up. And if you really do it well, what you can sort of plan is to do good things the next day, just because you want to be grateful.
Yeah, you want something on your list.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. So I think those are all just really, really great takeaways for the show. Is useless emotions do not serve you. Let them go. I don't care what people tell you, how people try to make you feel.
Absolutely.
I don't care what your conditioning has been up to this point. Do not implement, use useless emotions in your life. There's no place for them, no space, no room. And replace those with gratitude, which is number one on our list. Of course, there is love, and there is, love. And what else did you go along with love?
Well, respect too.
Yeah.
I mean, respect, and just having a sense of joy about living. Those are important as well. But I think they all come from gratitude.
Gratitude is up at the top of the list. Yeah. Well, my friend, thank you again for... Oh, I feel good after this show, so thank you for another great show.
The funny thing is, when we finish these things and when the camera stops, we talk about how great that felt and how much we learned from each other. It's such a cool thing. It's just two dudes talking about life. So yeah, thanks for watching.
Yeah, thank you so much. Any questions, send them our way. Thank you again.
Yeah, or any comments too. Yeah, we'll do that too.